Hello and welcome back to the Pink Floyd album ranking saga videos. This would be album number 8, I think, on the list, and episodes, I don't know, 7, 8, something like that. Who knows, man. Alright, anyways, great one today. We have it number 8. We're getting close to the middle now. None other than A Momentary Lapse of Reason. The David Gilmour final cut, shall we say. So, this is, ironically, what came directly after the final cut, which is funny because it was last in my list, at number 9. Right up, we have the next one. This was the 13th studio album. This came out in 1987, so this is very late Floyd. And this is a kind of a landmark album in a lot of ways. Biggest, obviously, most, notable thing is it is the first album without Roger. So, now we've got the David era, which is kind of cool because this album is amazing, but I don't even know where to start. So it came out in 87, no Roger. Rick Wright is back in the fold, though, so we have the three-piece, the quintessential three-piece of Rick, Nick, Dave. That said, interestingly, you'll notice here, awesome cover, too. I mean, how could you not like that? If we open it up here, you can see no lyrics or anything, but we do have some nice photos, some nice drawings in there. I do happen to have the original sleeve, but there are lyrics on the sleeve, I was going to say, so I do remember. Now, but you'll notice, interestingly, photographed is only Nick and Dave, or Rick and Dave. Nick and Dave. Let's try that again. And you'll notice that it says here that Pink Floyd is just Dave and Nick. But you'll notice Rick Wright is down here as the third sort of small print. And interestingly, when they re-released this album, Rick Wright was a full-on songwriter written. So for all intents and purposes, Rick Wright's back. He's in. He's just not in. I don't know. But Rick Wright's back. We've got the quintessential three-piece. Of course, a lot of people prefer the Division Bell to this album, it seems like. This is kind of like the precursor. This is gearing us up for the Division Bell, which honestly, I much prefer this album, but David Gilmour has full control now. That's why I said this is kind of like his final cut in a way, because it's David writing music, no Roger influence pretty much. However, Nick and Rick had a little more influence than they did on, well, not on Rick, but, on Final Cut. The other thing about this album that is super cool is that it is quintessentially 80s. Final Cut, not really, but as someone who's not a huge fan of 80s music, this album blends Pink Floyd and the 80s sound very, very well, and it's beautiful. So I guess let's dive into it and why I have this above the Final Cut when they're so similar, and why I have this so high in general. And I think that it really comes down to, I'm a David Gilmour fan. If you couldn't already tell by the rankings so far, I am definitely more of a Gilmour fan than a Waters fan. I love Waters, great music, but I do like some Gilmour. I would prefer that. Also, it helps when you're not a nasty person, but we're not going to get into that. So, let's get into it. So, first track on this album is Signs of Life, which is a 4-minute-ish long track, and really it's just a synth noise. It's really not any crazy music, it's just sort of a synth intro. But that immediately flows into Learning to Fly, which in my opinion is one of the best Pink Floyd songs ever written. Learning to Fly is one of the few Pink Floyd songs I legitimately think I could listen to on repeat for hours and not get bored of it. I think that every single other Pink Floyd song, as good as they are, I might get bored of after a while. I can't imagine myself getting bored of Learning to Fly. It is so great. It is just amazing, that album. And the song. Beautiful song, and it was a huge hit. I mean, even to this day, Learning to Fly is like one of 4 or 5 Pink Floyd songs that you still hear on the radio all the time. I mean, let's be honest. Comfortably Numb, well, sometimes. Another Brick in the Wall, Time, Money. I can't really think of any others aside from... Oh, Run Like Hell. We'll give Run Like Hell the benefit of the doubt. You hear that sometimes. But really, Learning to Fly, it's on all the classic rock. It's awesome. And yeah, it sounds pretty 80s, but man, is it an amazing song. I really have nothing bad to say about it, and I honestly think it's one of the crown jewels of this album. Third song is The Dogs of War. The Dogs of War is... The best way I can describe it is it's kind of like Learning to Fly. Like, you can... It's hard to explain because it sounds a lot like Learning to Fly, even though it's not. It's a totally different song. Great song, though. I mean, it's amazing. It's wonderful. After that, we have One Slip. Another one of those songs I could listen to on repeat all the time. There really isn't a bad song on this album. And that leads into probably my favorite song on the album, which is On the Turning Away. And honestly, I used to hear that song on the radio, On the Turning Away. It is a beautiful song. The guitar, the lyrics, everything about it. I would argue that, and this is something I'm going to bring up too, Momentary Lapse of Reason is the newest Floyd album that I regularly listen to. I don't really listen to The Division Bell. I don't listen to Endless River. This is it, and On the Turning Away is one of the, bigger songs. So this is getting towards the end of my interest in, Pink Floyd. I love Division Bell and Endless River, but I'm never like, ooh, I want to listen to Division Bell. No, I want to hear David Gilmour. I'm listening to this. So On the Turning Away, amazing way to end side one, beautiful song. Then we have on side two, Yet Another Movie. I'll be honest with you, I don't know why. That song, Yet Another Movie, reminds me of something off of OU812 by Van Halen. I don't know why. Maybe just the synth. I don't know. Great. We got two little short ones here. We have Round and Around. Short little song, not much to say. Yet Another Movie flows into it. That's something else I love about this album is they did the transitions, kind of like you had on The Wall. Not as crazy, but they're on there and it's amazing. So not much to say about that one. Then you have A New Machine Part 1. It's essentially David talking and saying, for a minute and a half. But it's cool. It's cool nonetheless. Terminal Frost would be next up. Another one of those songs that is quintessentially 80s Pink Floyd, but sounds so good. Two more tracks. You have A New Machine Part 2, which is 40 seconds long. Just like A New Machine Part 1, it's pretty much David talking for 40 seconds with some instrumental interludes, but great. And then you have Sorrow, which is an amazing closing track. How could you not like that track? So that's it. That is A Momentary Lapse of Reason. Let's talk about it a little. So like I said, this is the last Floyd album that I regularly listen to. It is so good. And I really think this is where David's songwriting really shines, when he's not being hindered by Roger. If there is some flack on the album, because I know why people don't like it. There are a lot of people who are diehard Roger fans who say, it's not good, blah, blah, blah. Same thing that a lot of people who I am with Gilmour would say about, Final Cut sucks, it sucks, Amused to Death sucks, all of those suck, Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking sucks. I'm not like that. I can appreciate Roger Waters, even though I prefer Gilmour's music, but this is just great. If there's any flack on it, I think why people don't like it who are Gilmour fans is because it is very 80s sounding. I mean, there is no mistaking that this is right in the heart of the 80s. It's a little later, but compared to like the bluesy stuff from metal, I mean, this is way more synth driven, more almost like not new wave, but a way more, like, hey, we can be hip and trendy too. Here's, I'm Dave and here's new Pink Floyd and this is that. So great. And I mean, like I said, Learning to Fly is one of the songs you hear all the time on the radio. Very 80s, but everyone loves it. I would argue that if you asked a non-Pink Floyd fan to name a couple Pink Floyd songs, Money would be on there, Comfortably Numb would probably be on there, Time would be on there, and I think Learning to Fly would be on there. I really think a lot of people who don't know the band would know the song Learning to Fly. But really, the standout track on there for me is On the Turning Away. What an amazing song. I mean, One Slip, Terminal Frost, Sorrow, they're all great. I mean, there is not a single song on this album, aside from maybe the New Machines, because they're kind of, they're short and maybe Round and Around, which, oddly enough, notice how it's the only one that's not capitalized. But, not a single bad song. You could listen to this album straight through and I would never get bored of it. Which brings me to an interesting point. If I love it so much and I'm talking so good about it, why am I ranking it so low? Let me tell you why. This could be a number 1 for me. It really could. It is such a good album. But because it's Pink Floyd, I can't rate it my number 1 because there are other albums that are even not better. I mean, really, once you get into the top 5, they've got their own strengths, but really this is where you start to get into this is the number 1 in a certain sound. Piper is this number 1 in a certain sound. Saucerful's number 1. I mean, you can't rank it against the other ones fairly, but also give it number 8. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I feel... I know this isn't my favorite. Like, I easily would listen to my favorite album, which is... we're going to talk about, over this. But when I want to listen to this, I want to listen to it, and I want to sit there for an hour and just listen and float away, just in that cloud of imaginary, I'm thinking of all this, picturing stuff, daydreaming. This is that album, and it's great for that. Ironically, my number 1 album I also think is good for daydreaming. But, so, that's really it. I don't have much to say. Which, by the way, I think it's funny that Roger essentially said, Pink Floyd will never be anything without me. Meanwhile, you have David saying, okay, here comes this album. 2 number 1 hits off of it. You have Learning to Fly was the one. I want to say it was One Slip that was the other single. Let me see real quick. On the Turning Away and One Slip were both released as singles. Yes, On the Turning Away and Learning to Fly. Those were the 2 number 1s. One Slip was released but not a number 1. So, yeah, take that, Roger. Oh, there'll never be anything without me. David says, hold my beds. Okay, anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for this one, folks. Hope you've enjoyed it. Again, really hard for me to put this at number 8, but it's just different. That's why it's at number 8. Good, though. So, thank you for watching, as always. Like, subscribe, look forward to the next one, and that will be it.